Hey, welcome, fellow human beings, to the podcast Addiction, Abuse, Recovery by Matt Logan Speaks. I am Matt Logan. However, I'm not going to be your host. Our host for this podcast is Sherry Irvin, who has personal, unfortunate experience with addiction and abuse, but she has been in recovery for more than 8 years now. Part of Matt Logan Speaks, we want to just share other people's stories in the hopes that it will help you through your day, that it's just another tool in your toolbox to get you through the day. So please help me welcome your host, Sherry Irvin.
Hi everyone, my name is Sherry Irvin. Welcome to Addiction, Abuse, and Recovery. With me today I have Michelle Rowley. Michelle is a woman in long-term recovery, and not only has she combated the addiction of alcoholism, but she also suffers from mental health issues as well. But what makes Michelle even more extra special is Michelle is the very first woman that I have had the privilege of sponsoring within the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. So it is my pleasure to have you here today. So welcome, Michelle.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me here.
Absolutely. So you are a very interesting case because not only have you had to deal with the effects of this insidious disease of alcoholism, but you're also struggling with mental health issues. So if you could tell us a little bit on how your journey's been and what you're doing now to get through the mental health issues, that would be great.
Yes, well, I have co-occurring disorders, as you just said, and I like the word co-occurring rather than dual diagnosis because it's very important for people to know that when you have mental health issues and addiction issues, they're happening at the same time. So you're dealing with the same things, or you're dealing with two issues at one time. I probably from an early age, I had that feeling that it was different, which, we talk about that in the 12-step program too. But I started to have anxiety issues at a very young age as well. I missed a lot of school growing up because of anxiety type things and just my family environment. When I was about 13, I had kidney stones, which is a very young age for a person. A very young age for a person to have kidney stones. And as an adult and talking to doctors like that, they figure that I got the kidney stones because of stress, more of a stress-related thing than because I haven't had any kidney problems or anything of that nature, or kidney stones happening after that age. But at that time, I was in a pretty deep depression to begin with, and then the kidney stones kind of combated that, and I had to have surgery and was really sick afterwards. And I, because of just the whole circumstance of it and not doing well in school because of mental health issues, and also having a family that didn't really know how to deal with mental health issues, or, perhaps didn't understand that that was really an underlying problem. My first suicide attempt was at 13. And it was basically taking a bunch of Tylenol and pills that were around the house. Because I think what people don't understand about people that try to end their life with suicide is that their self-esteem is so low. My self-esteem was so low. And so it's not that we don't think about the damage that we're going to do upon other people, but that we think, at least in my case, I thought that by ending my life, I was going to positively affect the people around me, that I felt so bad at myself and my self-worth that I just felt like the entire world would be better off if I didn't exist. And so at that time, my family did get me into therapy. And I came from a pretty dysfunctional household, as most of us do. a lot of trauma. And so I went into therapy at that time, and then I was living in Grand Forks, North Dakota. And so my dad got an offer at University of Minnesota Duluth he was an accounting professor, to teach there. And so we moved pretty much right after that suicide attempt. And that was kind of how things went for me, even at a young age when there were difficult problems. There was kind of a geographical change to thinking that might improve it. And it did in a way. I was much happier in Duluth. My parents made the decision to put me in a private school, so it was a smaller setting. My dad really was trying to accommodate for my needs in the best way he could without much experience in mental health or just acknowledging it for the age of my parents was kind of hard. My sister is 10 years older than me, and my brother was 14 years older than me. And both my mother and my brother suffered from mental health and addiction issues too, although not diagnosed. So, this is me diagnosing them, which isn't the smartest thing. But looking at their behavior and what happened, it was, that relationship with my brother and my mother, they were close, but it was very, not a very good relationship for the rest of us in the family. And my brother was in and out of jail from a young age, and lots of drugs being done in my house. So I just sort of thought that was normal, that that's what your older brother did. I didn't know, you don't know what you don't know. If that's what you're exposed to, that's how you think about it. And he ended up dying in 2001 of, he had hepatitis C and had liver problems, but he would not quit drinking. So he wasn't eligible for any sort of treatment for hepatitis C. So he ended up dying in a prison hospital in Maricopa County in Arizona. And he was angry up until the point he died. And I had just had my son, and so I couldn't even go see him because children weren't allowed in that circumstance. So that happened in 2001, right? In May of 2001. And my drinking really started to get heavy when I went away and studied in England in about 1991. I was 18, and the drinking age there is 18, so I found it very easy to get right into it. And even as a group, we had our first away trip, and I missed it because I was too hungover to go. I had drank so much the night before and just missed the trip. And so there were plenty of experiences like that in my life. And then, my drinking just got progressively worse, and along with it, my mental health issues. I was diagnosed. My mother died right before I turned 18. And at that time, they put me on a drug to help me sleep. That was also an antidepressant, because I also had insomnia issues from that time I was young. So really, what was happening was I did have signs of bipolar when I was younger, the kind of mania, not being able to sleep, followed by these long periods of depression. And I am diagnosed with bipolar 2 now. So that's kind of how, I would drink partially to help to bring me down in a way too. I thought it would bring me down, sure. But then you get to the point where it's not working anymore. It doesn't work that way. So my brother died from hepatitis C in 2001, very clearly of alcoholism. But that wasn't really, there's that desire to stop drinking, but not knowing how to do it. And this knowledge that my brother has died from alcoholism. And my mother was an alcoholic and had mental health issues. That's not what she died from. But having all this knowledge about these family members still doesn't deter you from following that path. I mean, as much as you get educated, as much as you learn about things, it's just such an insidious disease. I think my drinking really started in high school, and I started drinking alone in high school. I drank socially, but I wasn't one of those people that went to the keggers or was invited to the keggers even. Because I dealt with depression issues and isolated in high school as well. But I would drink, my mom always got those big jugs of wine. Remember those from the 70s? The big old bottles. I would, drink some of that in secret at my home before I would go to any dances or anything at school. And so, that was sort of, I was drinking alone just to have the courage to be out in public and be with people. And I think I'll skip ahead. In about 2003, I got a DUI. And at that time, that's when I really started to want to work on myself because of my alcoholism. And I was in grad school and was working at this Feminist Girls magazine and was a single mother. And a lot of that I could do because of the mania, but then I'd still have these depression issues. So there were a lot of problems going on. But I was also, I had to make sure everything on the outside looked good. I'm going to school. I've got this job. I can do it as a single mother, and hiding all of that pain inside because I wasn't dealing with anything going on with myself. So I would vacillate between accepting having a mental health disorder and accepting I had alcoholism, but I never wanted to confront that I had both. In 2003, I got the DUI. I got it in Menominee, Wisconsin, when I was presenting at a women's studies conference, and then went out and drank afterwards and got the DUI in this town that I did not know. And what a really leveling point that I look at is that while I was in the jail cell, one of the other people that had gotten a DUI was this young woman who I had, about my same age, who had actually waited on me at the conference. So it was sort of like that common denominator,
Wow. Yeah.
we have this in common. And after that, I did an outpatient treatment program, which I paid for because even when I was assessed for drinking, I didn't hit some of the marks that they thought were marks because I was really a binge drinker. And so they asked me questions like, do you drink before work? Or, do you drink in the morning? Which were all things I didn't do. But once I started drinking, I could not stop. So I was sober for a bit of the time, but really, really sick because I was not accepting my diagnosis, which at that time was major depression. I was not taking my meds because I had this thought that if I took my meds, then I'm not sober. Just this really abstract, not well thinking that happened. In 2010, I was really at my deepest despair in life. I I had taken time off work, and I was doing an outpatient cognitive behavior therapy course, but I was still going home from that every day. That was like 6 to 8 hours a day, but I was still going home and drinking, and was trying to keep that hidden, but of course it wasn't. And my son was about 9 or 10 at the time, about 11. And he had, I had a girlfriend that he stayed with while I was trying to get myself healthy. I was trying to get myself healthy, but still drinking. So in March of 2010, I was at my lowest point, and again, really felt like the world would be better off if I wasn't in it, that my son would have a better life, that my family would have a better life, and just, also having an anger about things, just a whole bunch of issues. So I did try to end my life again, and it was very serious. I had taken every medication I could find in my house, and I had taken, had drank just at least a case of beer, or close to it. And I had luckily emailed to friends about what I was doing. And this was a Friday night, and one of those friends had something going on early Saturday morning. So she saw the email and called the cops, and they broke down the door and were able to get me. And this did happen while my son was in the house. So after that, I ended up in a coma for over a week. I would say about 1 to 2 weeks. It's all still a bit hazy for me. It took a long recovery period to not just get mentally well, but to physically get well. There were continuous days where I would wake up and they have on the board, like, what your name is, what is the date. They ask you all these questions, and I wouldn't know what date it was. Some days I wouldn't even know I had a son. So that took some time and intensive care. And then I ended up in the mental health unit, where I was really confronted with my alcoholism, and had a social worker that worked at the hospital that said, if you do not do inpatient treatment, you will never get your son back. So at that time I did do an inpatient treatment, and it was supposedly dual diagnosis, but really wasn't. It was good at treating the alcoholism, but not so well at treating the mental health issues. So I went through that, and then when I got done with that, I just decided to move to Rochester, because I had, I'd never been there. I lived in Duluth, never been to Rochester, but I had heard they had a really great recovery community. And so it was one of those things where, another geographical change, but this one really because I needed to change the people, places, and things I was around. I just really wanted to get better and get in recovery. And so I did do that. And then I still had mental health issues and codependency issues, ended up in a relationship that didn't end quite well, and had about 2.5 years of sobriety, and then about 4 months of drinking again. And so in January, the end of January 2013, I again tried to end my life by taking pills, and went in the garage with my car on and thought maybe carbon monoxide poisoning. And that time I woke up the next day, and it was like, I didn't have any repercussions from it in a way. So I think of about the incident in 2000, well, all of them, there was some sort of divine intervention happening on there, because especially 2010, that was very serious. And, I was told, you coded, you about died. And in 2013, when that happened, I again went into inpatient treatment, but I went to one that really was suited for dual diagnosis. And what happened prior to going to the treatment and dual diagnosis is that they did a very thorough assessment for me when I was in Mayo. And that's when we discovered that I had bipolar 2. And I was put on mood stabilizers, which are completely different than antidepressants. And within a week of being on these mood stabilizers, that incessant suicidal idolation that I had like throughout my entire life just dissipated. And it was just really an eye-opener. I felt like, wow, this is probably how people feel. This is, I don't have that wanting to end my life happening anymore because my depression and I was just stabilized by it. So I did go into dual diagnosis treatment, came back and stayed at Cronin Home, and which is a fabulous facility.
It really is.
It really is really good.
Yep.
That place saved my life in a number of ways. I was there but still getting used to meds, so I ended up going into adult foster care, and I was with a great family in adult foster care. So I think what's important about my story is to show that I grew up in an upper middle class household or middle class household. I had a bachelor's degree, went to grad school, but to really save my life, I had to kind of let those things go in a way and, go from being someone who lived independently and had all these outside things, this great job and all of these things that looked good, to being someone in adult foster care and being okay with that. And I was, I still am really, really glad I made that decision because that changed my life. And then, so fast forward to today where I have about 7.5 years of sobriety. I have a whole team that I work with for my mental health. I have an arms worker. I have a therapist. I have a psychiatrist. I have, it's called this behavioral health home that helps you deal with your health, your physical health cares and your mental health cares at the same time. And so that's pretty much my full-time job. I'm doing a little freelance work and have been fortunate to have a couple of paid acting projects, but that's my focus. For a while it still takes time for me to get used to the fact that I'm not formally working. But I had a friend point out to me that basically I'm the CEO of keeping this together. And I think of all those mental health professionals, they're like my team, they're my team to keep it all together. And I just feel very, very fortunate for the life I have today, and take keeping it together very seriously.
So what are you doing today? I know that when I had the opportunity, you had approached me to be your sponsor.
Yes.
And, I'm beyond proud, because it takes a lot of hard work to get to where we're at. And you were my very first. I've had many since then, but, you were my very first. And so what are you doing today to help stabilize yourself? I know that you've done yoga. I know that you certified, and what are your plans for the future, and how are you paying it forward to other young women that are suffering with the same issues?
I do talk a lot with people that have dual diagnosis, because there is sort of, in the 12-step program, you're encouraged to talk just about your addiction and not encouraged to talk about your mental health as much. So I did go through the peer recovery specialist school, which you have done as well, and did that through a place where there would be a job. I live rurally in Fillmore County, and so there aren't a lot of supports for people with addiction or mental health issues. The person who was doing that there, the facility I was going to work for, ended up not working in Fillmore County anymore. So I've done some volunteer work with women who have had addiction issues and dual diagnosis. And basically that has been just through word of mouth. But I do have, like I said, I live in the middle of nowhere. I do online recovery programs. There's this one called Dharma Recovery, which is a Buddhist-based addiction program. And I have a very firm practice in yoga. And that community is very spiritual. And there's a lot of people in recovery in that community that they found different ways to recover. They get it through this different Eastern type spirituality and the yoga practice and mindfulness and just a whole different area, but just as important as 12-step programs. I do cognitive behavior therapy through Zumbro Valley, and that is just very important. Those are just skills that have saved my life, and been doing that for over 4 years. It's a 6-month program, but they haven't kicked me out yet, so I just keep going. I've kind of taken a break from that and work more with my therapist. But I do, like you said, I am certified to teach children's yoga and have done some volunteering at schools. I've kind of taken a break. I went through a depressive period last year, so it really has been more of a focus on me than other things. But I did get involved with acting again, which was important to me and had just fallen away for about 13 years. I do some freelance writing. I don't sponsor right now, but I'm willing to sponsor. But I think the best way I help people, to answer that question, is to just be open and honest about my story. And to make sure people know my story. And I've had lots of people contact me either through when I had a blog and writing about my recovery story, or just from posting things on Facebook about my recovery, because I'm really open and honest and not anonymous about any of this.
Well, I'm so proud of you, because I know that it took a lot of courage for you to talk about that, because I truly believe that, the mental health issue is not covered enough. It's always been so cut and dry. Either you're an alcoholic or you're, God forbid you be both. And I love the fact that, it's starting to come out more that, they go hand in hand. So I'm so happy that to have you here today, and it took a lot of courage for you to share that with me and our audience. So thank you so much for coming.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
It's awesome. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to today's podcast of Addiction Abuse Recovery, everyone. I hope that you enjoyed it. I'm sure you did, as I did. I want you to know that if you want to follow along, just go ahead and hit subscribe on YouTube and Spotify, iHeartRadio, Podbean, Apple Podcast. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. Just search out Matt Logan Speaks. We have all kinds of great content for you. Hit the notifications button so that when something new comes up, you're the first to know. Have a great day.